time to introduce our wonderful guest speaker, Marty.
Thank you.
Schreiber. Marty has reached audiences nationwide at live events and various forms of media. His humor and compassion as he shares lessons from his nearly 20-year journey as a caregiver for his wife. His speaking tour takes him to conferences, civic organizations, senior communities, libraries, and more like we are having here today. He has given more than 800 presentations since launching his awareness campaign in late 2016. Wherever Marty has presented, caregivers tell Marty that his message gives them encouragement and hope that they can manage their challenging situation. Marty's book, My Two Elaines, Learning, Coping, and Surviving as an Alzheimer Caregiver, is winning acclaim from caregivers across the country. It was rated as number 11 best Alzheimer's book of all time by Book Authority and was named to Caring.com's list of best caregiver books of both 2017 and 2018. Will you please give a warm welcome to Governor Marty Schreiber.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Trish. And there seems to be very strong confusion here. I thought I was invited here to audition for the Golden Bachelor. So Trish has been just great. She's been helping me out and just giving me all kinds of guidance and assistance. So thank you so very much for your kindness and your patience and the whole ADRC team. So I visit once in a while with the governor by phone. We sort of chat, and I tell him that I'm going to be with the ADRC, and he said that is without question his very favorite organization. He was able to get through the budget to have dementia care specialists and so forth. And so to my friends in ADRC, thank you for what you do to help people live their best life possible. Yeah, you should do that. Well, when I give the talks and afterwards when people talk personally with me and tell me about their challenges, I'm so grateful there's the ADRC where there is some place for people to go, because many times you just feel so alone, so solitary, so almost maybe abandoned. And then there is someone at least who can help you find some answers. So I'm very grateful for me to be invited to be with you is a very special privilege and a very special pleasure. I hate golf. I don't like golf. I never liked golf. I don't mind people who golf, but I don't like golf myself. And so if you ask me what is my golf or what is my boating or what is my hunting, it's being with you. And to be able to share and understand and laugh and even know that we should cry together, that's really a pretty important thing for me. As was mentioned, we wrote the book, My Two Elaines. And so this here book is the first book, and I self-published this book. And self-publishing a book means that nobody else wants it, nobody else is interested. And so what you do is you hire your own printer, your own proofreader, your own graphics designer, so you do it all of yourself. Well, what happened was people at Harper Publishing saw this book, and they felt it was important enough of a message that it should go nationwide. And they in turn then published this book. The story is exactly the same. However, that this now Amazon and Barnes & Noble and so forth, also we have a website, my2elaines.com. And so it's as was mentioned, people have said that it's been helpful to me, to many people. One thing about this book is, and have you ever picked up a book and started to, by the way, there are 90,000 of these books in print, 90,000. Only 89,800 left in my garage. But anyway, so you take a look at this book here, and people have told me that they have picked up this book and they started to read it and they couldn't put it down. Has this ever happened to you with a book? And I'm going to show you how that happened with this book. So if we go back 4 years ago in January, and this is before Harper's picked up the book, but anyway, so I'm running short of books. I call up the printer. I said, I need books. The printer got the book done not only on time, but ahead of time. But do you see how shiny this is? That's like a lacquer, like a varnish. Well, he didn't let it dry, and it became sticky. So people picked up the book and they started to read it and they wanted to put it down. Well, there was some advantage to that, though. I'll tell you why. As I mentioned, it's in January, right? And so people they have to go out and buy milk, butter, and eggs, for sustaining themselves. And what happened was they could not put their arms through their coat with the book stuck to their hand like this. So what they did was they draped the coat over their shoulder and they walked around when they went to the grocery store. Isn't this great advertising to have people walking around, showing people the book that I have? But unfortunately, I am being blamed for 16 cases of frostbite. Whether it is 4 hands with 4 fingers, 16, or whether it's 16 hands all together for a total of 30, whatever it is. So just so you know, it's not easy being the world's most famous author that no one knows about. And so you can sort of understand it. And so the books, ADRC bought some, and I want you to know that the books, we have some for sale, and the manufactured suggested retail price of this is $16.99, $21 if you are from Canada. Is there anyone here from Canada? Who is it? Did someone raise your hand? But don't worry about it, because if you buy the book for $25, we will refund the amount of money difference when Canada becomes the 51st state. Hi, how are you?
Great.
Good, what are you doing here?
Meeting my family.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here. What's your first name?
Corinne.
Hi, Corinne. Well, I'm pleased to see you. You want me to start all over again, Corinne? I forgot where I was, Corinne.
Refunding money.
Right. But I'm first interested, what's your social security number? Anyway, it's really great to be here to talk about my 2 Elaines. The first Elaine, that was a girl, the teenager, the girl I fell in love with when I was a freshman in high school in Latin class. Schreiber, Thaney sat next to each other and fell in love right away. And so we dated and we went steady and we got married, and 4 children and 13 grandchildren, now 10 great-grandchildren. My friend, my advisor, my companion, my life partner, everything that you could ever want in a life partner. If I would run for political office, she would be the hardest working campaigner. And if I would lose, this is very important for you and also was for me, if I would lose, she would never let me feel defeated. And it's important for us to understand that we, at times going through life, are going to lose, but we can never, ever allow ourselves to feel defeated. So that was the first Elaine. The second Elaine began to appear when she was about 63 years of age, and she would get lost driving to and from places she had been going to and from for the last 10 years. She would come up with stories that never occurred. She was a great cook, but sometimes she would mess up her recipe so badly she would cry. So that was the beginning of the second Elaine. On that journey, over a course of almost 20 years, there are some things that I learned and some things that I so wish I would have known earlier. One of the most important aspects, I think, for you and me is to understand that if there's one thing worse than Alzheimer's, it's ignorance of the disease. And when I say ignorance of the disease, I don't mean ignorance about the amyloids and the proteins and so forth. I mean ignorance of the disease on how to have a journey that can be as good as possible. So if we go back to 25 years now almost or whatever, when Elaine was first diagnosed, Alzheimer's could not be cured or prevented. Today, June 18th, 2025, Alzheimer's still cannot be cured or prevented. And so when we get that prognosis, when we are told that that's what's happening, it's easy for us to say, I am defeated. There's no hope. Well, I want to share with caregivers that there is something that we can do, something that is realizable, something that can make us feel that we're making a difference, something that we can carry on in our activity, and that is make a determination to help our loved one live their best life possible. That is possible. That is something we can do. That is doable. Helping our loved one live their best life possible. How do we do that? Well, we do that by joining their world. So important to join their world. So Elaine asked me once, how are my parents? I said, they're both dead. No, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. When I saw the look on her face, when she realized she did not attend her parents' funeral, much less say goodbye to them, I promised myself I would never put her through that again. And so the next time she asked me, how are my parents? Oh, I said, they're great. I said, your mom likes working at church, your dad likes the sports. Oh, Elaine said, that makes me feel so good. I feel good, so good about that. Well, that's what I call therapeutic fibbing. Therapeutic fibbing. Two things about therapeutic fibbing. Number one, I tried it the first year of marriage. Number two, and I want you to know I'm an honest politician. I'm going to tell you that some people do not believe what I'm going to tell you, okay? Actually, some people don't believe it. But do you remember the story? Have you heard the story about Moses and the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai? I was there. And we're up on top of this mountain. And we got to get the tablets down. It says, Mo, how are we going to... First of all, if you're with Moses, don't call him Mo. He absolutely hates that. So Moses, I said, how are we going to get this down to the bottom? This big tablets of stone. Well, he says, we're going to work at it together. So Moses and I, we work and we huff and we finally get to the bottom. And here I had a chance to look at it and written in Arabic Hebrew, the Ten Commandments. And I asked him to interpret that a little bit for me. And, well, don't lie, you never can lie, and all kinds of things. We know what the Ten Commandments are about. But I walked around on the other side of the tablets of stone. On the very other side of the tablets of stone were written in American English that you and I could very easily read. It says, therapeutic fibbing is good. It says, don't pay any attention to what it says on the other side of this tablet about lying, because therapeutic fibbing is important. And so joining the life, joining the world of the person who now is. It's 9:30 in the morning. Elaine wants a glass of wine. No, you can't have that is not the answer. Do you want red wine or white wine? Do you want it in a taller glass or in a smaller glass? Should we drink it with your friends, or should we invite your sisters over? Or, by the way, let's have a cup of coffee while we figure out. It's not dishonest. It's helping our loved one live their best life possible. However, understand this is a caveat for caregivers. In order for us to help our loved one live their best life possible, we have to, as caregivers, live our best life possible. How do you do that? Well, I'm going to just give you an example. Let's assume, hypothetically, I win the lottery. And I just love Whitehall, Wisconsin. And I just love everyone who comes to the ADRC conference. And we're having a great time. And so, you know what we're going to do? I said, we're going to take all my money and we're going to go for a cruise in the Gulf of... In the Gulf of Whitehall. We're going to go for a cruise in the Gulf of Whitehall, and we're all there together, okay? And we're having a good, we're doing the calypso and rum and coke and mint juleps and a steel band, and all of a sudden one of you falls overboard. And so we throw you a lifeline, and you grab a hold of it and you're safe. No, you're not, because the lifeline breaks. Well, why does the lifeline break? Well, because it's weak. It became so weak that it wasn't able to do anything to help save anyone. And so here's what happens. We, as caregivers, have to understand that we are a lifeline to our loved one. We've made the determination we're going to help our loved one live their best life possible, but then also we have to understand that we are their lifeline. And here is what happens to what we caregivers do. We gnaw at that lifeline. We chew at it by not getting enough sleep, by not getting enough to eat, by not getting exercise, by not doing all of the things that we should be doing to have just a normal kind of life. We don't do that. But here we're under a special kind of challenge, a special kind of opportunity, and we are ruining it. We're gnawing, we're fraying the lifeline, so it becomes useless. Oh, listen to this. Over 40% of caregivers die before their loved one due to stress-related illness. If you are a caregiver versus a non-caregiver, the mortality rate is 60% higher for caregivers than non-caregivers. Understand that, okay? Because, so my children had an intervention with me, and they sat me down and said, Dad, if you don't do something, you're going to be dead before Mom, and we don't want to lose both parents. Not only do we not want to lose both parents, but you've got 13 grandchildren that you can also help rear, and all kinds of other kinds of things you might be involved in. And so, please understand the importance of taking care of yourself. Our goal is to help our loved one live their best life possible. That's our goal. And the caregiver has to live their best life possible by taking care of themselves. Easier said than done. You know, I mentioned that Alzheimer's was not curable or preventable. There was a period of time when Elaine, in assisted living memory care, they actually thought that she was getting better. And I'll tell you how that came about. I would try and be with her as much as possible. Now we're in the cafeteria at assisted living memory care, and we're sitting there eating, and she looked at me, and she said, you know, you're really very handsome and very, very good looking. Well, then she started to tell the people around her, says, look how handsome and good looking my husband is. Well, there was a doctor and a nurse that were eating at the next table, and they heard her tell me how intelligent and how good looking I am, and they looked at me and they said, he is intelligent and he is good looking. She must be getting better. So, and what's your name? Well, anyway, can I go on with the story, please? All right. So the doctor and the nurse wrote an article for the New England Medical Journal. And they wrote back and they said, you know, you said, you know, good looking and what was the other word?
Very smart.
Intelligent. Yeah, intelligent, good looking. Pay attention. Okay, so intelligent and good looking. And so that Elaine Schreiber thinks her husband is intelligent and good looking, wrote the New England Medical Journal, and they wrote back and they said, you have to show 3 things where someone is getting better. You only show 2 things, intelligent and good looking, but you have to show 3 things where someone is getting better. Some time went by, and now by happenstance, we're at the same table having lunch at the same time at the same doctor and the nurse over here who wrote the article. As we're having our lunch, she asked, how did we meet? How did we meet? When did we meet? How would it, so forth. You know how sometimes the repeat questions come aboard. I said, Elaine, I said, when we were freshmen in high school, we sat next to one another. I fell in love with you right away. And I said, I wanted you for my wife. I wanted you for the mother of my children. And I said, not only that, Elaine, I said, if any boy got within 50 feet of you, I popped him on the head. She looked at me and she said, you're a bullshitter. Well, now they've got the three things. What really happened is we are having lunch, and this is so important for us caregivers to understand, and also friends of caregivers and relatives of caregivers. What really happened, Elaine and I were having lunch, and while we're having lunch, she looks at me and she begins to cry. I said, Elaine, why are you crying? Well, she looked at me and she says, I'm beginning to love you more than my husband. Yeah, well, I didn't ask her what's wrong with your turkey husband. I didn't do that. But anyway, here is what is so important as to what that meant for me. It is not necessary for my loved one to know my name in order for hearts to touch. Remember, our goal is to help our loved one live their best life possible. That's the most important thing. And so it is not necessary for her to know my name in order for our hearts to touch. Our hearts can touch by holding hands, by giving a hug, by singing a song together, by giving a smile, by just being together. And so many times we get friends of caregivers and children and so forth. Well, they don't know who I am anyway. Well, I don't think so. I think hearts can touch without knowing names and without even showing recognition. That kind of spirit of touching becomes so very, very important. I mentioned that along the same lines about this Alzheimer's is not what you call a chicken casserole disease. Hypothetically speaking, I fall and I break a hip and I'm being healed up and bring me chicken casserole. I have open heart surgery and I'm recovering, people bring me chicken casserole. Maybe only bring me 2 or 3 chicken casseroles because I'm going to get better. My hip is going to heal and my heart is going to get better and so forth. If my wife has Alzheimer's, because people are ignorant of the disease, they don't know what to say and they don't know what to do, so they stay away. And so because they stay away, not only then am I going through everything that a caregiver goes through, but in addition to that, I'm feeling deserted and abandoned by people I've known for 15, 20, 25, 30 years. Not because they're mean do they not show up, they just simply don't know. And maybe I was responsible for not bringing them along on the journey, at least those people that are really very close to us. And so if we can understand that this is not a chicken casserole disease, and we can help more people understand. The thing about the chicken casserole disease with the hip, that heals. We know that on the Alzheimer's journey, there is no prognosis for things getting better, just for descending. And so when we think about that, we think about the fact that we're now acknowledging the fact that our loved one is disappearing from us a little bit every day, a little bit every day. And so what this leads to then is the next thing for we caregivers to understand. I had a friend who was in his 70s and enjoying retirement. He has dinner one night. He dies of a massive heart attack. Gone, snap of a finger. And there was a funeral, and people came by to express their sympathy, condolences, and there was closure. There was closure. As tragic as it was, there was closure. For caregivers and their family, there never is closure. And so we have to understand that what we are doing is we are really going through a process of grieving. We have all of these emotions about what we could and should be doing, the guilt about sometimes losing our temper, all of these things are coming into play. But we simply have to understand that we've got to sort of open ourselves up and understand why we are feeling the way we are feeling. And one of the reasons is we're going through a process of grieving. So we caregivers, we can cry. We can cry sometimes so hard but it's important because we're going through a grieving process. We're losing our loved one. That's not an easy thing. In addition to losing our loved one, we're trying to help them live their best life possible. And so that all begins to become so important. One of the things I wanted to mention also, my 2 Elaines, the woman who was this wonderful person, and then the second Elaine who was the person living with Alzheimer's. There's 2 Martys, okay? And if you're a caregiver and your first name is Sam, there's 2 Sams. If you're a caregiver and your name is Mary, there's 2 Marys. I'm going to tell you why it's important to know that there's 2 of us as caregivers. The doctor when first diagnosis, said there's 4 things we should be doing. Numenda and Aricept, which are drugs which are supposed to delay the symptoms. Whether they work or not, I don't know. But they said that's what we should do. We did it. Okay. Socialization. Socialization becomes so very important. That's walking. Walking is without question the best exercise for the brain. The third or the fourth thing is a glass of wine, red wine every evening. Elaine got 4 weeks ahead with a glass of red wine every evening and 3 weeks behind in the walking. But here is the difference between Marty, the person without living on the Alzheimer's journey, and Marty, the caregiver. The doctor said we should go for a walk. Remember exercise, best exercise for the brain. That's a half an hour. So Marty, the regular guy, we're going for a walk, and as we're walking, Elaine said, look at that pretty flower. Come on, Elaine, we've got a half an hour to get this walk in. We're walking along, he said, listen to the bird. Come on, Elaine, we've got to get... So Marty, the caregiver, would never, ever, ever stop his wife and the caregiver and myself from having a wonderful moment of simply looking at a pretty flower. Marty, the caregiver, would never do something to stop us from being able to have our hearts connect by simply listening to a bird. Okay? Marty, the caregiver, would fib. Marty, the other guy, the real guy, he would correct. He would correct all the time. And so we have to understand, as a caregiver, we have to embrace a new mindset. We have to understand, Marty, the regular guy, he'd never ask for help no matter what. Marty, the caregiver, is smarter than that. He knows that if you ask for help, it means you're not giving up. It means it's a matter of courage. So we have to understand that. So you are 2 different people as a caregiver, and that's important that you realize that you do that. Because really, as your regular person, if you don't adopt this new mindset, there's just hell, living hell, for both the person who is ill as well as the family. So understand that. Another aspect, this disease, and we have to be open to this disease takes us to places we never thought we would be. That's a fact. Did you and I ever think that we would be here in Whitehall on June 18th? Together with one another? I never thought that. And so, but we have to be open for these kinds of opportunities. Being here unexpectedly and so forth reminds me, I was elected to the Wisconsin State Senate back in 1962. One of my responsibilities at that period of time as a member of the State Senate Education Committee was to go to a meeting in Washington, D.C. If you take a 5:30 in the morning airplane out of Washington, D.C., you can go to your meeting and come back the same day, which I was in the process of doing. 5 o'clock, we're getting on the airplane. In front of me is this very distinguished-looking gentleman. And as we're getting on the airplane, he asked the flight attendant, does this plane stop in Detroit? She says, yes, sir, we stop in Detroit. People get off the airplane, people get on the airplane, we go on to Washington, D.C. He said, I have to get off in Detroit. She said, fine. No, he says, I have to get off. She said, yes, sir. No, he said, look at this. I'm inclined to fall asleep. I've got a very important meeting. If I fall asleep, I'm going to miss the meeting. That's one. Will you help me get off? Yes, I'll help you. Are you sure you? Yes. Do you promise? She said, sir, I promise I will get you off of this airplane in Detroit. Now we land in Washington, D.C. And here this distinguished-looking gentleman gets off of the airplane. As he gets off of the airplane, he berates the flight attendant like I've never heard anyone berated before. Oh, my goodness, it was just horrible, just horrible. Well, after he left, I went to the flight attendant feeling sorry for the flight attendant. I said, my gosh, I said, that man was angry. And she said, he was angry. You should have seen the fellow I put off in Detroit. But it does take us to places we never thought we would be. If there's any takeaway from this discussion, it's if there's one thing worse than Alzheimer's, it's ignorance of the disease. It's a matter of making sure we join the world of the person who now is, that we can do something which is productive and doable and help our loved one live their best life possible. To understand that incorporated with that is we as caregivers making sure we live our best life possible by taking care our health. All of those come into play. Before I went to print, maybe about 4 weeks before I go to print, I find a series of notes and journals that Elaine had been keeping since her diagnosis. And I went through those notes and journals and with my daughters Christine and daughter Kathy. And I want you to know, when I went through those notes and journals, I want you to know that we had prayed together and we had cried together. But never did I understand the courage that it takes to be diagnosed with this illness and go forward. Also, never did I understand how important I was as her lifeline. And we talked about how important to be as her lifeline. And so I went through those notes and journals, and every chapter begins with some of Elaine's notes. And what that does is give us an insight into some of the emotional experiences that a person goes through as they try and make this journey. In that regard, I'm going to read a few of them in a moment or so, but I want you to know that in this situation, there are what I call two pivots, two changes. The first pivot I consider is by the grace of God, when our loved one finally enters their own world. And as long as Elaine was in her questioning about whether she had Alzheimer's or not, all that experience that she was going through, her life was extremely unhappy. And we're going to read about that in just a little bit. So the pivot is when our loved one finally enters their own world completely. The other pivot is by the caregiver. And what I'm going to tell you as a pivot by the caregiver is so much easier said than done, but very important. And that is, we have to get to the point where we let go of the person who once was so we can embrace the person who now is. Because as long as I tried to keep Elaine in my world, as long as I tried to keep her in the first Elaine's world, it didn't happen on a Thursday, it happened on a Friday. Elaine, why did you put the car keys in the dish? Elaine, I told you 10 times you're leaving it. What we have to do, we have to understand that we have to embrace a new reality. We're two people as caregivers. And so we morph into an understanding that it is so important that we have to get to the point. We keep the memories, we make sure we do that, but by the same token, as a practical matter, to help and our loved one, for us to make that kind of pivot so that we can now better love and help the person who now is. And so I think what we'll do is I'm going to read a few excerpts from Elaine's notes from the book. I have books for sale if you're interested. $15, including sales tax if you don't tell the governor. Because this is my life, if you feel that there is an organization or a group that would work out well for us to be able to visit and talk together. I have a car, I travel. People ask me about the fee. I generally pay about $200. Anyway, aren't you fun? Aren't you really good people, huh? Give yourself a round of applause. I think you're terrific. So what I'm going to do here is read some of Elaine's notes, and what I did, I photocopied the pages because I was getting to the point where I fumbled and fumbled and fumbled. But I want to, before I do that, will you remember we're going to do this next? Okay, thank you. Anyway, I think. Okay. I know what I was going to tell you. This is like, over 800 talks. Two things that have, as we progress in life, we learn things, Two things that I learned giving these, not learned, but my experiences. First of all, giving these talks, I have so much more time on my hands because what I conclude is that if I give a talk and the room becomes empty, I stop talking. And so it used to be that I would keep on talking, but now that I stop talking when the room becomes empty, I have all that extra time. And so, but anyway, the other point that I experienced, I am now, as you noticed, I am now staying awake during my entire presentation. No, and it's important, well, here's what happened. I'm giving the talk, and I said, this guy's interesting. I wonder what else he's going to say next. And so, I've been, we learn as we go along. But anyway, so I'm going to read a few of Elaine's notes here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about prayer, patience, and persistence. And then we can do questions and answers. I don't have a clock. What time is it? Oh, there it is, 1:35. Okay, oh boy, we didn't. Okay. So anyway, so when she was diagnosed, one of the very first things she did, she wrote a letter to her dear loved ones. So, dear loved ones, it wasn't until a few weeks ago that I really had to say, yes, I do have Alzheimer's. I had read of signs that indicate Alzheimer's, like getting overly upset for no reason and having trouble with names and directions. But I still didn't think it was a problem for me. But in hindsight, for too long, I've been getting lost driving, having trouble keeping days straight, and difficulties with names and schedules. Still, I still felt I could handle it. It won't get worse. But this morning, I started reading about the mid-stage of Alzheimer's in hopes of preparing myself better, and realized I'm not very far away. That is most scary, but I have to accept it. And so that's the beginning. As she is traveling on the journey, she writes, I wish my Alzheimer's would dissipate. I'd like to be the smart wife and mother I used to be. Now I have to waste so much time just trying to figure out what I should be doing without seeming as smart as I used to be. I need to rely on my Marty for everything, and I'm very lucky he continues to keep me. Life gets more difficult every day. And so you hear what she read, or she wrote. She said, I need to rely on Marty for everything. Well, as we said, by the grace of God, there's the pivot, but in the process of making the pivot, listen to this. I am not enjoying my role anymore as Marty's wife. Because of his having concerns about my Alzheimer's, he doesn't let me be me. He doesn't let me go for a walk if I want to, or to the store alone. I used to appreciate him, what I thought was concern, but he holds me captive much too much. I'm going to try to have a second opinion because I really don't think I have any problem. I know how to drive or walk any place I want to, but he doesn't believe me, and I hate the control he has placed on me. I don't even think I have Alzheimer's per se. And so I read that, and then I think about what her journey was like, and I think about the fact I messed up on not looking at a pretty flower with her. I messed up on the fact of not joining her world soon enough. And I'm thinking, wow, if someone else is going to be on the journey and I can do something to help make it better and easier for them, that's what I would like to do. And so anyway, this is the last one, and my favorite. And she wrote this on the 3rd of July, way back in 2012. Life is good, and I plan to have it continue that way until my children tell me it's time for a nursing home or something like that. This is realistic with what my Alzheimer's book says about my future, but till then, I will try my best to be normal, whatever that means, and keep my happy side of life always continuing. I'm lucky to have such a good family and many friends to help me get through all this. And so another great day to thank the Lord and smile, smile, smile. So I read that a lot. But anyway, so prayer, patience, and persistence. Someone told me this story. I think it's true, but maybe not, but I think it is. So this woman had this parrot, and all of this parrot knew was, Polly wants a party, Polly wants a party. Well, she's expecting some out-of-town guests, and she's concerned that if her out-of-town guests come and visit, and she has a parrot, and the only words the parrot knows is, Polly wants a party, Polly wants a party, they're going to think less of her. What kind of person has just a parrot with the only words, Polly wants a party? She becomes so troubled, she goes to see her priest. She says, Father, she says, you have to help me. I don't know what to do. I have this parrot, Polly wants a party. My friends are going to come and visit, and they're going to think, what do we do? The priest said, this is a miracle. He says, I myself have 2 parrots, Peter parrot and Paul parrot. And he said, I've had them for 7 years, and all they do is pray. They pray every day of every week of every month of for 7 years they've been praying. And what we should do, said the priest, is take your parrot and bring it over and put it in with my parrots, Peter parrot and Paul parrot, and my parrots will be a good influence on your parrot. And they agreed. And so the lady went home and got her parrot and brought it over to the priest's home. And they opened up the cage and they put the lady's parrot in there. Sure enough, Polly wants a party, Polly wants a party. Peter parrot looked at Paul parrot and said, our prayers have finally been answered. All right, we can have questions and answers. What we're going to do is if you ask a question. Hello? I heard something. Oh, if you have a question, I will try and repeat the question so everyone can hear it. If you ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, I will rephrase your question. So there'll be no... Anyway, thoughts or ideas? One of the questions we get most along the trail is what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? And that's an extremely important question to know the answer to. Cancer is like an umbrella of all different kinds of cancer, skin cancer, lung cancer, so forth and so forth. Dementia is also like an umbrella, meaning that the mind, the brain is not working right. Why is the mind or the brain not working right? It could be because of depression. It could be because of a mix-up in medications. It could be because of an infection. It could be because of Lewy bodies. It could be because of Alzheimer's. It could be because of a brain tumor. And so understand that there should be a proper diagnosis in order for you to take the next steps that are necessary to help you or your loved one on the journey, whatever we're on. Because if it could be the medications, or if it could be depression, or it could be an infection, all of those things become so important. But that's one of the questions that we get along the trail. So, Trish, I don't know, what do you think? Yes?
Can you talk about what you did specifically for you to start to repair that lifeline that was gnawing away that your children recognized?
The question is, how could I possibly have lost the election for governor? The question is, what did I do to repair the lifeline? It didn't happen with a snap of a finger. There is no question. Well, my daughter gave me a book on the benefits of moderate drinking, and it was not because I was drinking too little. I was really too much Beefeater's gin. And the emotions, the guilt, and all of those things come in, and I wasn't getting enough sleep. I ended up going to counseling, and I ended up understanding. This is important for us caregivers. So I'm talking with a counselor, and I tell the counselor, I cannot see putting Elaine into a nursing home. And the counselor said, you are not putting Elaine anyplace. You are giving her an opportunity to be who she is now. Can Marty Schreiber's nursing home take care of her? Absolutely not. Well, the point being, it was my selfish, egotistical fight against Alzheimer's. It was not my desire at that moment to realize I can help my wife live her best life possible. Once I began to understand the importance not only of how much she depended upon me as her lifeline, but then to also understand that to help her live her best life possible, I had to begin taking care of myself. And I wish that it would have come sooner as far as my enlightenment on how to do that. Now, one of the follow-up questions that I get from the audience is, what do I do if my dad or my brother refuses to take care of himself? You tell him or her that Marty Schreiber said they've got to take care of themselves. And you also tell them that to ask for help means you're not giving up. And let's assume hypothetically we're all surrounded by an enemy. And we're surrounded. Well, what are we going to do? Just sit there? Or are we going to go ask for help? And to go ask for help is a matter of courage. And so to ask for help means we're not giving up. To ask for help is a matter of courage. And part of living the best life possible is to make sure that the caregiver does get respite, to make sure that there's an opportunity to at least have some kind of breathing space and breathing room. Now, if you are a friend or a relative of a caregiver, generally what does not work is, and this many times people say with great meaning, if I can ever help you, call me. Caregivers don't do that. But what you can do as a friend of a caregiver is say, I'm going to stop by and I'm going to mow the lawn, or I'm going to visit and I'm going to take Mary or Elaine for a walk, or I am going to pick up your medications, but something very specific. But to begin to get that kind of respite so that there is some breathing room to help the caregiver on that journey. Does that help you? Okay, thank you. Yes?
What do you do with the Alzheimer patient that stops talking? How do you treat them? They can't seemingly answer you.
All right, the question is, how do we help an Alzheimer's patient who does not talk? And we, ADRC is here and they can listen to some of this. First of all, understand, I only know through experience what I talk about. And so I don't have experience with that particular situation. I do have some basic rules, and that is wherever the patient is at, that's where I will be. And so if you're at a situation where an individual is not talking and so forth, well, I guess number one, to make sure they're comfortable. So if you're not talking, but you have, a needle that's hurting you, or you're some other kind of too cold and so forth, we'll check on that. But if they're simply just not talking, the Alzheimer's disease, as it progresses, it gets at different areas of the brain. Sometimes swallowing, no ability to swallow, but it's also memory, but maybe also talking. But that the answer to your question does not lie with me. By the way, in the book is the 800 number for the Alzheimer's Association, and if you don't want to buy the book, I can give you that number, but it's a 24/7 hotline, and you can call and you can ask that question of them, if I can find it. It's alz.org also. And maybe I'll just find it here in a second. But just please know that there is that 800 number for you. Here it is, 800-272-3900. So, and then also, as some encouragement for you to think about buying the book, the winning lottery numbers, every single number that's a winning lottery number, every digit is in this book. Anything further? All right, well, I want you to know that if you are interested in delivering chicken casserole, 2700 South Shore Drive, Milwaukee. We do have a website, my2elaines.com. If you think that the book is helpful, please let other people know about it. Help other caregivers learn, cope, and survive. That would mean a lot to the person that you want to be helping out. I'm going to close with just a little bit of a story which is unrelated. What I'm going to tell you is not going to help you in your world one bit, other than the fact that I enjoy telling this story. But anyway, so in closing, most of this is true, what I'm going to be telling you. This first part for sure. So I always wanted to be a governor. And when I was young, I had a few uncles that were pastors. My dad was on the city council. I saw what was going, but that's what I wanted to do. So I prayed every night that I would be a governor. Had I been smart, I would have prayed for 4 four-year terms. I didn't. I just prayed to be governor. But I was. And so I've got to be satisfied with that. But here, I lived in Milwaukee, and once a year, my dad would take me to the Bar Inn Ranch, Mothie Lake, Wisconsin, for a 1-hour horseback trail ride. I lived for that. And I always wanted a horse. And so what happened was I lost the election for governor back in 1978, and I took a job with Century Insurance Company and ended up on a hobby farm. And that gave Elaine a chance to run her antique business, which she always wanted to do. And she was extremely happy about that because of an additional barn that we were able to refurbish and so forth. But then I also found a horse that was half trained. The horse's name was Brianna. But for the purposes for you, so it's more exciting, I'm going to change the name to Thunderbolt Killer. And so Thunderbolt Killer, so the horse was half trained. So what I would do is on a Saturday morning, I would have a horse trainer come with me and work with me and teach me how to train the horse for over the course of the week. And then the next week we'd learn a little bit more. And if you ever trained or worked with a horse, you know that a twitch, soft on the backside, so go forward, you know, walk, and then you twitch them, then you move forward, and then if they have a halter and then underneath here, and you say, whoa, and you pull that a little bit, and then they begin to associate that. Well, the day came for me to get on the horse. And it was a really exciting moment. So I got on the horse, I sit in the saddle, I'm straight up. Not only am I very proud, but Thunderbolt Killer is really very proud. I say walk, Thunderbolt walks. I say trot, Thunderbolt trots. I say whoa, and he whoas, he stops. Oh, we all felt pretty good. What happened was, though, is a rabbit jumped out from behind a bush, frightened Thunderbolt Killer so much that began to jump and buck so much that my right foot came out of the stirrup, and the horse's right rear foot got caught in the stirrup. Oh, I tapped the horse on the shoulder. I said, if you're getting on, I'm getting off. I love you guys. Thank you very, very much. I wrote the book, and I wanted to tell my story and share Elaine's story. And then I get a question like that. What did your children say, or what did they do? How stupid of me. I'm on my own journey, and I don't take the time to ask my kids how they're doing, okay? They're always there for helping, but we never shared that kind of emotional discussion and understanding of how we're going to go through this alone as well as go through this together. And so we've got to make sure, you know, if there's one thing worse than Alzheimer's, it's ignorance of the disease. We can't keep our children and our close relatives ignorant of this disease. We should be really sharing that with them. And so in the first editions of the book, and the next third or fourth edition, I came out with what I call Conversations from the Road, which were some of the most basic questions that I got. One of them being, how do you help children understand? And so each of my children wrote a brief paragraph as far as what they were going through. Above all, it's a tough journey. Then number two, how do we try and make sure that we create some understanding of this disease within our close circle? And what I also learned is that everyone handles grief their own way. I have 4 children. My one son, he would die for me, but he wanted to remember Mom as she was, so he hardly came by. The 2 daughters were just absolutely terrific. My son Matt was also good, but everyone handles it a different way, and I can't tell them how to handle it, you know, and we can urge and cajole, but we can tell them, but it's not going to do any good because they've got to deal with it on their own. I think one thing we learn is to be understanding and loving and knowing that other people are going through the same kind of hurt, but they're handling it a different way than what I would handle it personally.
How about a standing ovation for Marty?
No. No. Thank you.